On today's episode, we'll talk about the importance of the second assistant, the beginnings of the red camera, JAG, the value of learning from a mentor, and of course, making more than your high school guidance counselor. Just a little bit of business before we start. There may be a curse word here or there in this episode, so please listen responsibly. As always, our website, theop.io, is up and chock full of tips, tricks, and gooey operator goodness. Make sure to check out The Breakdown, where the best operators in the biz explain shots they have done, The Musings, where we discuss everything from quick tips to larger concepts of storytelling, the answers, the images, and so much more. I may or I may not take a break or two during this episode, but I promise that none of them will be longer than 22 seconds. Finally, if you are enjoying the podcast, please follow us, write a review, share us with your parents, and talk us up around the water cooler with your friends. So grab a beverage, sit back, and enjoy the op. Thanks for listening.
Lock it up, nice and quiet, and let's roll.
Rolling. Victor 30 Echo, take 2.
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark.
And camera set. And action.
Hello and welcome back to The Op, the podcast where we talk with operators and other people in the business about the art of operating and visual storytelling. My name is Dave Comides. I'm your host yet again, and we are once again coming to you from the lovely theater in Panavision Woodland Hills. That's sounds better than the basement of my house, so I'm glad to be here. And today I'm really excited. A great operator with us, Brian Bernstein. Brian has done a ton of things, been in the business for a long time, and among other things, just pulling a few things off of IMDb, American Horror Story, Star Trek Picard, Legion, Goliath, Pretty Little Liars, Heroes, Southland, and actually one thing I want to ask you about, you were back when you were First AC, you worked on the Ben Stiller show, which I actually thought was a very funny show that never got its due, or maybe it did, but I thought it was better than it should have been around for longer. So Brian, thank you for being here.
Well, it's really an honor with the list of people that you say that have sat in this chair before me and who you probably have after me. I'm blown away that you asked me to do this. And Dave and I have been friends of the business for a long time. And we, because of our work schedules, we're always working. We have never gotten together socially. And I guess because we work the way we do,
Exactly.
that if making a podcast like this gets us together, I'm so happy that I'm able to spend the time here with you.
There are people that I know in the business, and a lot of them I sit down here and I'm like, God, we've never sat down this long and actually
Right.
I was Tommy Shalami, who created The West Wing and whatever.
I don't know him, but
Yeah.
we have mutual friends.
So we sat down together, and afterwards I said, I don't think we ever talked this much, and he said, not without an AD interrupting us, because we both tend to get into stories on set, and then they go, you guys got to come back to work. But
or at the catering table trying to scarf down a meal as quick as you can before you have to call your wife and then get back to work.
With the 4 minutes you have in between shots.
Right.
So, Brian, tell me your story. How'd you get here?
Well, mine is probably a unique story compared to the way people get in today. If we remember that far back when you and I started, I guess there were only 4 film schools in the United States. It
Could
was
very well be, yeah.
USC, UCLA, AFI, and NYU.
Yep.
Nobody went to film school. Everybody started as an apprentice, and it was my senior year of high school. Now, because of family reasons, I moved back and forth from the East Coast to the West Coast 3 times in my childhood.
Wow.
Came out I spent the first 13 years of my life in New York. My whole family moved out to California. My dad opened up a business here.
To L.A.?
In L.A.
Okay.
Completely unrelated to filmmaking. He was in the schmata business. The business didn't work out for him.
Yeah.
It ended up destroying my parents' marriage.
Oh, jeez, I'm sorry.
He moved back to New York. I moved back to New York with him. Came back out to L.A. a year later.
Okay.
And that was for my senior year of high school. Now, the school system back in New York was way ahead of the California school system.
Really?
We would have 8 periods a day. They were on the quarterly system. So by the time I got into high school here in California, they didn't know what to do with me. They said, well, you already have enough units or credits to graduate,
Yeah.
but you need to take 1 or 2 courses. And so basically I was going to my senior year of high school 2 or 3 classes a day. And after a couple of days in each one of the classes, I'm realizing I did this in 7th grade. I did this in 8th grade. So basically I stopped showing up. And I was only going to class like once or twice every other week. Anyway, I have a very good friend. My best friend is my first cousin. And he had a difficult childhood also, where we became best friends when I met him for the first time when I was 5 years old, and we became best friends. Then there was a gap of about 8 years where I didn't see him because he was sent to boarding schools, and then he was sent out to LA to start a career. His dad was in the business. So by the time I came out to LA the second time, my mom says, when I got here, by the way, you know your cousin Robert lives out here now. And I was like, do you have his number? I called him my first or second day I was back in LA. It was like we were he's 5 years older than me. It was like we're 5 and 10 years old again. We were as thick as we saw each other like hours after the phone call. He had a small apartment in Santa Monica, and he was just married. And I mean, it was just like we were like best friends again.
That's great.
That first cousin of mine is Robert Keslow.
Oh my
the
gosh.
owner of Keslow Camera.
Yeah, wow.
So at that point, he was a first assistant.
He was a first assistant. Okay.
Right. And he asks me the next day, what are you doing on Friday? I thought he wanted me to come down to his house, and he lived right on the beach, and go boogie boarding or something.
Okay, yeah.
He says, can you ditch school? So I said, sure, what are we doing?
So you're 18 at this time?
I was
17?
18 years old.
Okay, yeah.
I said, what are we doing? I thought we're going to go to Santa Monica Beach and go boogie boarding.
Yeah.
He says, no, I got a Hispanic McDonald's commercial that you're going to load mags for me, and you'll make $3.75 a day.
It's big money back then.
I said, what's a mag?
Yeah.
And I honestly thought when he said $3.75 a day, I thought I was getting $3.75. I mean, so I was 18 years old.
I know.
I was in I never had a job. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
when you say you never really had a job, I mean, this is the
Well,
only
and
industry
also,
I
it's
know.
fair to say to anybody who's listening to this now that might be in school, $375 back then was a lot of money.
And it was cash.
Well, and there you go.
So he shows me how to load a BL mag in about 5 minutes. And it was the best weekend, a 3 days shoot at a phony McDonald's set that was down by Disneyland. that they
Okay,
used to
yeah,
shoot
it's
all
one of
the
those ones
commercials.
that they set up to use for all the commercials. Wow.
The producers really liked me. The director really liked me. Robert said, you did a great job.
Great.
It was, so much fun. A week later, he says, is there a chance that you could ditch school Thursday and Friday? I said, yeah, what are we doing? He says, we got a Good Morning America commercial
Okay.
in Lincoln, Nebraska. So the second job I have, it's
Oh,
on
cool.
location, and we're flying out there, and the old commercials, they put us in the top-notch hotels, gave us top-notch per diem. That was it for me. I was
Kidding me?
I was sold on
Yeah.
the motion picture industry.
That's great. And you were loading on that as well?
I was back then,
Sort of loading and seconding?
there were no seconds.
Yeah.
The second was the loader.
Yeah.
It didn't matter how many cameras you had on particularly these two commercials were single camera.
Sure.
But I mean, back then, if there were 4 cameras on a set, there was one guy clapping the slate for 4 cameras.
Yep.
And loading for.
Yeah, and for anybody who's listening who doesn't know, loading the magazines means you go either into a dark room, into a tent, and you've got to without looking at it, load the film into the magazine and close it and prep it to come out and be put on the camera, and then download it afterwards, actually back into the cans. But it's funny because it's in a weird way, it's sort of the low person on the totem pole in the camera department, but it's actually one of the most important jobs because you screw that up and you're done.
And there were all kinds of times that, late at night, and the responsibility being put on the lowest guy on the totem pole.
That's exactly
You're
right.
scratching your head going,
This is
man,
stupid.
this kind of doesn't make sense. But you know what? It was tradition.
Yeah.
I guess that's how you weed out.
I guess better way to put it is it's not the lowest person on the totem pole, but it's the entry level position.
Correct.
And the weird thing again is the entry level position is potentially the most important.
Well, I think that's why you and I have so much respect for that position.
Yeah, no question.
I mean, I think the industry is changing where there's a lot of people in positions now that did not come up the ranks like you did or I did.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid it may be hurting our industry, that there's so much lost craft. I mean, over 100 years now,
Yeah.
of filmmaking craft and experience
Yep.
that I don't think is going to be around in 10 years from now.
It's possible. It's changing that fast. That's no question about it. And with technology and everything else. And also one of the things that I've noticed is, it used to be very specific that for the most part, a loader became a second AC became a first AC became an operator, an operator became a DP. Not always, but that's sort of the way it went. But back then, and you knew about this, you were there for this, the assistant was sitting next to us on the camera. So they heard you and I talk to the dolly grip, and they felt the dolly move, and they learned all this stuff. Now the assistant is in another room, and I sort of think about it, and I go,
How are they learning to operate?
how are they learning to operate? And if they do jump in, they're going to have to start from the. I mean, they obviously know a little bit about it, but they're not getting anywhere near the information that they used to. And it's just simply because it's not their fault. They have to be in another room, or at least separated from us now.
Most of the time. Most of the time.
Yeah, but at least they're in it. They're not on the dolly anymore because they've got to have these big monitors to see focus because it's just so critical, and
And we're using so much.
it's a different situation.
So many more cameras
Oh, yeah.
than in the past, and the sets are more practical.
Yep.
And in their defense, more than half the time, there's no room for them on the set anymore.
It's exactly right. I mean, that's the thing is I know a lot of assistants who want to be in it. It's just
Right.
like, they're trying to occupy some corner and they get kicked out.
They get kicked out, absolutely. And after the 10th time they're kicked out, they're
Forget
just
about
like,
it. Yep. It's crazy.
I'm going to be outside
Yeah.
the set wall. If you need anything, Brian, I'm on a headset.
So you're 18, you're making crazy money on commercials and whatnot.
So I went to Birmingham High School in Encino.
Okay.
In my homeroom was Lisa Bonet, and it was the first year of the
Actress.
Cosby
Yeah.
Show.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So,
And she was still in the regular high school.
she was Birmingham High School,
There you go.
but she was only in class, a couple of days a month,
Yeah, because she was shooting.
and so if her and I were in homeroom at the same time, our homeroom teacher would make a big deal about it. Oh, look who's decided to, grace us with their presence. And so anyway, sometime before Christmas in my senior year, homeroom teacher says, Bernstein, you need to go to the office. Your guidance counselor wants to have a word with you.
Uh-oh.
And it's I'm getting all decent grades. I mean, they told me before I even started the year I could already graduate. So I wasn't worried. And on top of it, I had a pocket full of money and I had 2 jobs lined up. And, I was a cocky 18-year-old kid. I bought my own car already. So I show up at the guidance counselor's office, and I never even met him before. And he goes, go ahead and have a seat. He's looking at my file, doesn't even look up. He says, do you realize you have 48 absences this year? I said, I knew I had a lot. I never really counted them or anything. Yeah. He says, it's like, you need to be in school. You're not going to graduate like this. I said, what do you mean I'm not going to graduate? What, I have like a 3.5 grade point average or something. He looks down and goes, you do? How are you doing this? So I explained to him that I went to school in New York and everything you're teaching I learned years ago. And he says, yeah, but you know what? You'll have your entire life to do what you want. You really should come to school every day. And he says, what are you doing outside of school? I said, I'm working. That's why I'm taking off. He's all, you're working. What are you doing? I said, I'm working in the motion picture industry. He says, well, can it wait a couple more months till you graduate? I said, well, I'm pretty much doing what I want to be doing. And, it's a funny story to tell now. I look back, I was completely wrong to do this.
Yeah.
But it's part of my story, and I did do it.
Sure.
I was so cocky back then. I said to my guidance counselor, I'm making more money than you are.
Oh.
And he says,
yeah.
well, that may sound like a lot of money. I said, I made $750 last weekend.
Yeah.
Cash.
Yeah.
And his eyes looked at me and goes, are they hiring? But that was my entrance into the motion picture industry. I was a second assistant for Robert for about a year and a half.
Mostly on commercials?
We did one low budget feature.
Yeah.
But yes, it was
That's great.
all commercials. Through Robert, I met Dana Gonzalez and Billy Boatman.
Mm-hmm. Billy Boatman. I haven't heard his name in a long time.
And I seconded for both of them for about a year and a half until all 3 of them, basically decided, you're now the B camera first.
Okay.
As a year and a half later, we started doing bigger projects. Now, all of a sudden, there was a second camera. So they moved me up to a first assistant.
That's great.
So my second assisting days it wasn't a long career as a second, but I'm great. I did it long enough where I have so much respect for what seconds do.
Oh, yeah.
And as an operator, you and I both know that it doesn't matter how hard you and I work, that once again, because I was a first, if we don't have a second who's on the ball and listening, that we don't have to sit there and explain it. That second assistant, what an important job. And, I mean, when you have a good second, it's like, I can't do enough for that person.
There's no question. I mean, so the good seconds that I think of are the people who, I start sort of talking to the dolly group about, well, maybe if we could, and within 2 seconds I'm turning around and you go, do we have and she's holding the offset already,
it's
ready
right there
to give it to me or whatever, because they know exactly where it's going.
We all have shtick, it's like, that's part of it. And when the seconds are good and they know that I love them, which fortunately, when you get to our age in our careers, that we normally get to work with better crews, and it's
thankfully
they just the seconds I deal with, they just know. It's like, I consider it the glue that holds the camera crew together. It's like you never have to worry. You know everything. The equipment's taken care of. It's right next to you when you need something. The first is happy because the first isn't worried about what the second's doing all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So how long did you first for?
15 years.
15 years.
Wow. And it's longer than I ever thought I would have firsted. I loved it. I had a great time as a first assistant.
Did you, because of how you got into it, did you sort of think, I want to be a director of photography, or did you just sort of go, I'm just on this ride and I was
so young and I was having so much fun.
That's great.
I mean, what a lifestyle.
Yeah.
I was always, I look at myself now, but I was always one of the youngest ones on the set.
There was a point, yeah.
And they used to, make, wow, how old are you? And you're the focus puller, you're 24, 25, and you're the friend. Now it's not so unheard of. Back then it was. It was really unheard of.
Yeah.
And, I 15 years as a focus puller, and I had the time of my life for probably the first 12 years of them. And then, it's one of those things as an artist, as just the person that, I know you are too. It's the constant need for the next challenge. Yeah. It's, you've done that and you love it. And let me tell you, when you get now I look at when I get a really good focus puller, I guess to tell this part of the story, I have to jump ahead a little bit.
Okay.
As an operator.
Yeah.
Different operators have different styles of working, just like DPs or directors. Some people like to make all the decisions. Some people like to treat it like the military. The people that I work with most often, they all know that I want everybody's opinion. I'm in with there's so many talented people between my dolly grip, my focus puller, even the second AC, or whoever it is. It's like the gaffer. I mean, I want everybody to know when I'm on the camera, if you have a good idea, let's hear it. It's like, it's because I don't always have all the answers, and the one person, and so I don't like to shut people down. I want to, but eventually, I mean, it's your responsibility, my responsibility to ultimately make the decision to keep that ball rolling. So occasionally it's like, we can't do that, but I'll explain to you later why we can't do it. Let's keep going. But I like to hear what's going on. Now, going back to when I was a focus puller, I learned that from the operators that I love to work with. And I was such a good focus puller at the time. It was one of my mentors taught me early on, do not ever hand that Microforce or zoom gun to your second as a focus puller. You need to do the zooming. That's what makes us Hollywood first assistants.
Wow.
We could pull focus and zoom at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And it was kind of like a challenge to me. And I got really good at it. And I loved zooming and focusing. And we used to do, this was before we had all the cranes and all the steady cams. I mean, steady cam was a day call.
Yeah.
We didn't carry them.
No.
So in order to move the camera, it was old school on the dolly and on the dance floor with a 12-point move all over. And it got to the point where I would be looking at the frame and if I just tightened up 10 mils on this next move, that would be I wouldn't even talk to the operator.
Just hide the zoom.
I just hide the zoom and the dolly or white. And all of a sudden the operator would look out of his, eye off the eyepiece and go, good job. Go, keep going, or no, don't go too tight. Don't go too, But they gave me the freedom to do it.
That's great.
And I loved it. I loved being that kind of a focus puller.
And for anyone who doesn't know, isn't in the business or doesn't know this, what Brian's talking about is that with one hand he would have his hand on the focus knob and be actually focusing and judging distance and figuring out the depth of field in his head to make sure everything was in focus. And with the other hand, he would have the zoom control, which is electric gizmo, depending on which one you have, where he would be slightly zooming in or zooming out. So it's almost like one of those things where you're patting your head and rubbing your belly.
Right?
It's it takes the ability to split your brain into two parts almost.
Yeah, right. I absolutely loved the focus pulling part of my career. I have so many great memories and just the camaraderie because you brought it up. We were on the camera with the operator.
Yeah,
we were right next to the dolly grip.
I missed that.
It was the three of us: the operator, the dolly grip, the focus puller.
Yep.
We had so much fun together.
Yeah.
I mean, just in the 16th hour of a day when everybody on the set's like falling asleep and crying, the three of us had to be the sharpest ones because there's no rest. I mean, they're all waiting for us to line up the next shot to get ready to shoot. But the camaraderie of the three of us and never mind if you have a B camera next to you, the six of us now, just joking with each other. And no matter how tired you are, you're out there. Someone's always cracking a joke and laughing. And
well, it's like I remember, back in those days when it was crazy hours, 14, 15, 16 hours. It's the kind of thing where everybody would sort of take their turn making sure that everybody else was on their toes,
Right.
Because otherwise people start fading and, someone will reach down and smack you or talk to you or whatever.
Another very important person in my training. You get to our age and you have all these moments in your career that someone said something to you that you never thought of on your own. And it'll never, that exact moment, whatever set you're on, whatever time of day it was, someone that you respected came over and whispered something to you or gave you words of wisdom. And I was working with John Leonetti.
Oh, wow.
And
famous cinematographer.
We were all exhausted. And he comes over and goes, okay, guys, let's all put on our game face right now. Look around, the crew is exhausted. Let's put big smiles on our face. Let's act like we just got here. And he says, because we're the leaders. They're all looking at us. Everybody's going to feed off and let's just, make it look like we're all having a great time. And I never forgot that.
It's very valuable. Look, the thing is, sometimes as the operator, especially when it gets that late, you have to be the cruise director a little bit,
right?
Because you're the person on that floor, and everything else is going around, and you got to sort of entertain the troops a little bit, and that's not
motivator.
But and in the sense that you got to set the tone,
right?
Yeah. There's no question.
Most of the time, they hear our voice the most.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially with the headsets these days, which we'll get into that in a little while.
We'll talk about that. So then when you moved up to operating, was it a big, was it nerve-wracking?
Hardest thing I ever did in my life. After 15 years of pulling focus, being on your A game, working with the biggest of the big, nothing but praises. Every time you showed up, thank God Brian's here. This guy's the best focus puller. This guy, you're going to love this guy. I mean, everybody I ended up working with was wide open shooters.
And you get a comfort zone there, right? Where you know you're wanted. They know what you're doing. Nobody's questioning whether you know what you're doing. And then suddenly you go down to the bottom, right?
I begged to do the move. I was on one show
to move up to operating.
I was on one show I was doing it on my 4th season. I finished the 4th season, and it was a really tough show. It was really tough.
Do you mind, what show was it?
It was Jag.
Jag. Oh, okay. Which was around for 20 years or something. It's one of those shows.
It's almost 30 years now if you consider that the NCISs were all spin-offs.
NCIS
is a spin-off.
So,
I actually worked on the pilot to the original NCIS.
Oh my gosh.
Which was shot during one of the episodes of Jag where... Yeah, so it's like I actually have old friends. I mean, one of the dolly grips that I worked with on Jag has been the dolly grip on the original NCIS.
Wow.
I mean, and
so
the
you're
director
talking
of photography.
spin-offs of spin-offs of spin-offs at this point.
30 years.
I had no idea. That's so weird. Wow.
I think it's 30 years. They've been on the same stages up in Valencia.
That is incredible.
Yeah,
wow.
shooting the...
Amazing.
Yeah.
But so Jag, you moved up.
I begged the DP, after the 2nd season.
And they didn't want to move you up basically because they didn't want to give you up as a focus
They didn't want to
puller.
lose me. And he kept saying that, it's like...
It's the problem when you become good at something, right?
And he said, what would you do in my position? And I told him flat out, it's like, truthfully, I give the person, that's who I am. I give people opportunity.
And I'd give them a raise.
I mean, it's like, and give him a piece of the rental and give him, it's like.
But the reality is he's got to be smart enough to know he's at least mentally going to lose you, if not actually losing you, because you want to do something else, you want to move forward.
And the person I credit, and I have to mention this name and I have to tell this story.
Yeah.
3rd season of Jag, we were on our 3rd or 4th A-camera operator on that show. Some of the operators were phenomenal operators, but the hours were brutal. So they didn't want to come back. Some of them were just not good operators, and the cast and the directors were tough. If they got whacked. We had a revolving door of camera operators for the first 2.5 seasons. Finally, the DP, after, we come in on a Tuesday and call time on a Tuesday is noon because we had such a long Monday.
Wow.
And we find out that the guy who's been with us for 5 weeks now on A-camera, they fired him last night at wrap time. So the whole crew's there and we don't have an A-camera operator. But the DP says, get me the available list. We'll get through today, and we'll have to figure out who the next guy is. And he gets the available list and looks at it and goes, holy cow, call this guy right now. Everybody's going to love him. He's great. And he showed up, and the DP said to me as the A-camera focus puller, do me a favor, tell him what's going on, help him out. Yeah. You're going to love this fucking...
Get him into the groove.
You're going to love this guy. And this guy turned out to be one of my best friends in life. We knew within 15 minutes. It's Frank Pearl. And Frank Pearl was...
Great operator.
He was, if not the best, one of the best his operating, the way he would paint with whether it was the wheels he was using or the fluid head, there was no mechanical aspect of his operating.
Beautiful.
And within like a couple of hours, he had so much respect for me, which is not why we're friends. He could have cut me to shreds left and right, and I still would have loved him.
Sure,
he was so much fun and such a great...
That's
but
great.
he took me under his wing right away. And every time he went to do something to fit, like when there was a problem with take one and someone comes running out, let me do this. He says, no, I got an idea. Let us fix this. And he would look at me and go, listen, we're going to move that mark over there just a couple of inches to the left. That way they don't have to move that light over there. Then we're just going to move that desk behind him a couple inches the other way so she could stay in the front. I mean, it was just everything that he would fix, he would explain to me.
That's amazing.
And I spent the next year,
Learning.
the fourth season,
Yeah.
listen, and he gave me so many great pointers.
It's great.
You know, it's like when you're on the wheels here, put it in neutral, put your pan wheel up to 12 o'clock, lock it back into first gear. That way, when you know you're making that rotation, it just every little trick in the book. He sat there explaining it to me. He went to bat for me. That fourth, when they offered me to come back on the fourth season, and I said, I really want to operate, will you? And we had gone through so many B camera operators. I mean, they were hiring kids, and this is an important thing. And it's going to be fun telling you this because you are a Steadicam operator. And this is about the time you came into the business as a Steadicam operator. What happened was when the Pro Steadicam first came out, it was the first time every rich kid who didn't want to come up the ranks, who wanted their break in Hollywood, was able to ask their parents for a loan.
Yep.
And in film school bought the
There were a number of people who did that, and suddenly it's, hey, I'm an operator because I own this, and it's like, no, that doesn't make you an operator.
But it did for a couple of years.
Paper, yeah,
a couple of years.
Yep.
A lot of them were getting hired on pretty big shows with absolutely no filmmaking experience. It was not just kids coming out of film school. There were quite a few grips that decided they wanted to, but at least those guys had filmmaking experience.
They had some set etiquette,
They had
knowledge, and whatever.
absolutely,
Yeah.
and I actually worked with a couple of them that were great at it.
Yeah.
But at that point, the DPs kept asking the focus pullers. It's like, help these guys out. Do me a favor. Tell them why they're boning us. Tell them why you can't do not do that again.
Yeah.
You can't just do a 360 around an actor because you're wearing a Steadicam. We didn't light for that. We didn't rehearse that.
boy.
We just it was at the point where I got saddled with 2 on JAG. Back to backs.
Two bad Steadicam operators.
Bad Steadicam operators.
So B-camera Steadicam, right?
And
Yeah.
it's like the actors were coming up to me and going, why are you not, it's like, do we really need Steadicam every day? It's like, we're not even using Steadicam because the directors and the DP are so frustrated.
Don't like what they're doing.
I mean, these guys can't operate a set of wheels, so they're on the fluid head.
Yep.
And they can't do a stand up or a sit down. Once they're on the dolly grip's angry because they don't know how to communicate with the dolly grip because they've never had to do that.
Yeah.
They're used to running around with a Steadicam and
So these actors are basically saying, we got this guy here. Why are we fumbling all the time when we could just use him?
So now I had a relationship with the whole cast and crew.
Sure.
And Frank Pearl went up to the director of photography, and he completely went to bat for me and said, listen, this guy's been busting his butt for you, and, it's his turn. Give him a try. And the DP finally gave me the opportunity, and he was my good friend for the 3 seasons I was his focus puller. And that day I showed up on day 1 of the 4th season as an operator, it was like we were never friends. He was so rough on me. I mean, and it's like I thought I knew everything.
Yeah.
He made me feel like I was worthless.
Wow.
And it wasn't until halfway through the season when one of our reoccurring directors, who very unique individual, he was a first assistant. He was an operator. He was a director of photography.
Oh.
He was a full-time director for 15 years before I met him.
Okay.
And once again, when I was his focus puller, when he came in to direct JAGs, when I was the focus puller, he was my best friend. He loved me. We had so much fun. And then that first day as an operator, working for him, you could see that my name was already poisoned, that he was very hard on me too. But he came up to me months after we started the season, and it was just like he realized how hard I was trying. He remembered all the good times we had. He saw I wasn't giving up. and he gave me a few pointers. And I grabbed onto them. He said, when camera's not working, you put it in the back of that set over there. You put the wheels on that camera. You put the longest lens on the set that you have. You follow either the actors around that are acting, or you follow the stand-ins. I don't want to see you sitting anywhere. I don't want to see you in craft service. I don't want to see you. And right away, I had the dolly grip, put it back there. I had my focus puller with me. I told them what this director said to me. And after 3 or 4 days, he said, come on, let's bring in that B camera. They're ready. And he came right over me and goes, I saw you working. You're ready to go. Let's do this. And, he started me out with easier shots. And then he made a big deal that, look at how good Brian's doing. And he got me over the hump that season.
That's great.
DP never, it was the end of our friendship, which was so sad. But that DP didn't come back the following season.
There you go.
They put a new DP in.
The way it goes sometimes, and you were there.
Yeah, and I was there, and I had my sea legs underneath me, so it was not an easy transition.
Yeah.
It was the hard. I mean, I could have easily gone back to a very successful career
But you
as an
persevered.
operator.
I mean, you got through it. you
And
know?
Frankie Pearl gave me the advice. He said, I know it's going to be the most difficult year of your life, but do it because you have the skills, you have the talent, you've earned it.
That's great.
And once you get through one season, that's it. You're an operator.
And do you remember a point in that season where you felt like you could go in and do what they threw at you? Was there a point, or
Well,
did it take
it's
longer
fun.
than that?
I could, looking back now, I mean, 35 years filmmaking.
Yeah.
And actually maybe a little longer. Got in Local 600 in 1989. I think, wasn't that about when you joined?
Yeah, it probably was maybe 90 or 91 or something like
Right,
that.
but then 3 or 4 years of non-union work
Yep.
before that.
Oh, yeah.
So looking back now, everything we do, it's just a trick that the reason we get comfortable or better as operators is because we could look at the experience. We've been put in that situation before. It's that concept of 10,000 hours of anything makes you an expert.
Yeah.
I don't know if I completely agree with that, because I've met people on my journey that it's like, holy cow, that kid's good. And he just picked up the camera, and holy cow, that girl is going to be whoever it is. Some people are just naturally
Yeah,
gifted.
there's some people who, and the other thing about that is the 10,000 hours thing. But you have to learn from that, because
Right,
there's some
yeah.
people who will do it and they never
They
learn.
never- yeah.
So-
you and I could sit here and list.
No. So
How did they fail upwards so well?
So it is one of those things like, you make a mistake. Yeah, it makes sense. You make a mistake twice, that's a problem. So
But
you gotta learn from that and move forward, right?
Well, you would hope so.
You would hope so.
I mean, in our line of work, there's been people who watch them make those mistakes, and next thing you say, they're executive producers.
That's exactly
now. How in the
right.
world?
Yeah, that's the way of the business.
But it's like that first season. I mean, honestly, there were moments that I felt good about myself, but it was an eye-opening, humbling experience to go from, I had a successful short career as a second assistant, working with great people, and then as a focus puller, I was really good at it.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting that that's the route we take to get to, or we did take to get to operator, coming up the ranks. And,
Sure.
But the translation between a focus puller and an operator, where the focus puller is a lot more of a tech, that an organizing technician, and everybody below you, it's kind of like a hierarchy that you have to, almost like the military, where we have to have a hierarchy in the assistant world. It's not like that as an operator, because as the operator, you're one of the head communicators on the set between you and the first AD and the second ADs and the director of photography. I mean, we are doing a lot of the speaking for the bulk of the crew where as a focus puller, you may be really good about saying the dolly didn't hit that mark,
Yeah.
or the actor was off the mark, or that light went out, but when you have to constantly rely on your communication skills, and never mind, it's the art form of a lot of people coming up always told me the rules, and it wasn't until the really good people like Frankie Pearl, there are no rules. It's an art form. It's not a science. It's what you think, what you feel, it's like, stop saying the eyes have to be here. The person's got to be on that side. It until you realize, stop making it. And it's tough because the focus puller, there are rules.
Absolutely.
I mean, you got to keep it in focus.
Well, yeah, it's. I mean, there's art to that, but there's also a lot of technical aspects to
right.
that. But so since you brought this up, I'll ask you this: when you're operating, do you ever think about the golden rule, the golden ratio, the rule of thirds, any of that kind of stuff? Does that ever come into play, or do you just frame things up the way that you feel that they tell the story?
I've gotten to the point in my career now where, and also some of my mentors, once again, I'm going to bring up mentors. I have a handful of mentors that mean the world to me.
Yeah.
The people that have always been good to me, and I love. I mean, I actually love these people.
Yeah.
They've in a business that, and for the younger people, one of the you find out a lot about people when you work with them the hours we do. A lot of people you think are good friends or good people will surprise you over the course of a lifetime of a career.
Yeah.
And then there's a group of people that feel the way I do, or that you do, and that's why we're friends, because I know your reputation. We've been around. There are so many good people.
No question.
In the film community, so many good ones. And it's funny because the good ones know the good ones, and the good ones know the bad ones.
Yeah.
But it's really tough on younger filmmakers to have to learn that lesson.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way around it, unfortunately. And
that's part of life.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not just our industry.
It's exactly right.
It's in any industry.
I think the only difference is because we spend so many hours a day with these people, it almost goes into hyperdrive. Like, it happens faster and not always faster, but it's more intense. Like, you just have more information, do you know?
Yes.
It's funny you talk about good people in this industry. I don't know why I just thought of it. Well, I know why I just thought of this. You know Simon Jarvis?
Yes.
Focus puller?
Yes.
Wonderful. A great focus puller and a wonderful human
person.
being. I was putting an irrigation system in my back lawn, and I had it all dug out. And either he came over for some reason, or maybe he came over. Maybe I asked him to help me. I don't know, whatever. But my wife was pregnant, and she was expecting. I mean, we were, towards the end of the pregnancy. And I think that was what it was. I called him up and I said, "Hey, can you help me out with this? Because I got to get this put in." And I ended up not being able to finish it before she had the baby. And, she had a tough delivery and whatever, so in the hospital for a couple of days. And I'm basically coming home at night, and we come home with the baby eventually and my daughter, and I look out in the backyard, and I realize that the whole thing has been finished.
It's done. Wow.
And I called him up and I said, "Did you come in and finish this?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Why'd you do that?" And he said, "Because you just had a baby. You're not going to finish it, and it had to be done. So I just came and did it." So while I was in the hospital, he just came and let himself in the backyard.
And that's one of those things you'll never forget.
No, absolutely. And it's who he is. And like, those are the people that you run into this business, that it's weird because maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think someone you're going to the office with, you'd have that kind of relationship.
No.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's just, I think it's because you work so closely
with people,
and you work so many hours with them.
And there's danger involved sometimes.
Sure. Yeah.
There's just the experiences we have.
Yeah,
It's
you've been
the
you've been through
adrenaline
the
is
fire,
going.
and there's no question about it. And how much you rely on each other.
There's tough times. There's easy. I mean, working all night long in the pouring rain.
Yep.
I mean, it's
Well, and the way you get through it is you're miserable together. And you
right.
Get, and you're, you know what, you're going down right now, so I'm going to pick you back up. And in 20 minutes, I'm going to need you to pick me back up. And
the camaraderie.
And it's kind of amazing. It is kind of amazing. So going back to operating, how many years would you say it took till you were really till you got called for a job and you could go, you know what, I can go on set and do this. I'm not worried.
Okay. Okay. Well,
what do you think?
Honestly,
actually, let me back up. Did you stay on JAG for a couple of years after that?
I ended up staying on JAG for 10 seasons.
So you were a family. I mean, it was
it was a family.
So that's great.
The lead actor on the show ended up being one of my closest friends.
No, that's great. That's
the lead
nice.
actress on the show is still a friend. We still keep in touch. I mean,
10 seasons is a long time. I mean, you want to talk about becoming a family.
We always talked about it that high school is 3 years of your life, and it's only 7 hours a day.
Yeah.
And you remember your high school your whole life.
And there's a lot of corremations between being on a set in high school also.
Absolutely, especially back when JAG was made. I'm not a big I haven't dropped a lot of names, but the executive producer creator of the show was Don Belisario.
Oh yeah, big time.
For anyone listening to this, if you're not familiar with the name Don Belisario,
Huge.
you have to IMDb Don.
It was like a staple of like basically 1980s television, right, or 90s maybe.
He was the last of the moguls.
Is that right?
I mean, the term mogul.
Yeah.
I mean, this man was larger than life.
Wow.
He was a big man. He was like, I'm going to say 6'3".
Oh, okay.
He grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, poor as dirt, where it's steel town. I mean, and this guy came to Hollywood and started writing scripts. And I mean, the first day working for him, this is a great story. The first day working for him, I got called in to do B camera focus puller by Lex Rawlings. Lex Rawlings was on A camera. Great guy.
Yeah.
It was the first season of JAG, day 2.
Yeah.
Lex was on A camera pulling focus, and he said we worked a 14-hour day yesterday, and I was the only camera here. And we were trying to use 2 and 3 cameras.
Wow.
So today I made sure I got another operator.
Yeah.
And so Don Belisario was directing the pilot. This was the pilot episode 1 of JAG. So I open up the newspaper. We all carried newspapers back then.
We did.
They were lighting. I'm sitting next to the camera. I open up the LA Times, and the front page of the business section, Don Belisario's picture is the main story. And on the front page, it says, Don Belisario sells the rights to Magnum PI and Quantum Leap for $340 million. And I look at the operator, I poke him.
That's that guy over there.
It's like, check him out. Don's on the cover.
Yeah.
So I said, once again, I was young and I was cocky. I yelled, "Hey, Don, you know you're on the cover of the newspaper." And he looks over and goes, "Don't believe everything you read." So I said, "Hey, Don, when you get $340 million, how do they do that? Do they give you a check or do you ask for cash?"
Suitcases,
He says, "Don't believe everything you read." I said, "Are you buying lunch today?" He says, "I buy lunch every day."
There you go.
Don pulled me over to the side one day and says, "Let me give you a couple of," this was 2 or 3 years after I met him. "Let me give you a few tips, Bry. Always direct the pilot of any one of your shows." He says, "The way residuals are, then you get a paycheck for the entire run of the show."
Yeah, so
he says, "Don't only direct it, make sure you do a little writing. Hire good writers, but make sure you do a little rewrite on it, because then you get residuals from the writing of the show." He says, "Then make sure you put your wife in the show." Because then she gets residuals from it. So if something doesn't work out in your life later on and she's no longer your wife, at least she's got some income coming in.
Wow.
Put your kids in the show somewhere. And if you're lucky enough that it's not your first show, somewhere in the pilot, have an episode of another series of yours playing on a TV in the background, because then they got to pay residuals to that shit.
Wow. So he had the whole thing dialed in. That's great.
He was such he was such a
Sounds like a character.
And with the I mean, people don't know these rules. I mean, they don't.
Yeah.
And he was such a loyal person to work for.
That's great.
That was Don's crew, Don's guys, Don's actors. And it didn't matter what the studio said. Everybody would just look at each other and go, Don's going to handle it.
Yeah.
Don's going to handle it.
Yeah. Wow. But that's amazing.
Getting back to operating.
Yeah. No, that's a great story.
It took me, I'm going to say, a good solid 3 or 4 years of working every single day.
Yep.
You know, I was lucky to be on JAG. You know, I was the B camera operator on the 4th season and the 5th season. The 6th season, I was moved up to A camera operator by the 7th season. And when I moved up to A camera, got to remember, I had an entire cast who supported me, wanted me to succeed.
Perfect place to do it.
The new DP was the old A camera operator who wanted me to succeed.
Yep.
The dolly grip was one of the best, wanted me to succeed. So they really helped me after I got over the hump. But it wasn't until, 3.5, 4 years of operating every day, I felt like, okay, I'm getting good at this now.
Yeah.
This is getting good.
Yeah.
But then again, it was film.
Mm-hmm.
We had an eyepiece we had to have our eye on.
Yep.
You had to walk around the dolly. You had to set up the dolly up correctly. It was a lot of different things than what we do now.
It's a different world, there's no question.
And, I mean, you and I lived through the transition of film to digital.
Oh, yeah.
And, so many, I hear constantly about, oh, I miss film and oh, you were around during film. How much do you miss it? And absolutely, I mean, for years coming up, it's like we would go to the Showbiz Expos and there would always be one booth talking about going digital. And for years we would laugh at it and go, they've been talking about that for 10 years. It's never going to happen.
That's exactly. Showbiz Expo was like this big, trade show of all the new gear and whatever.
Right.
It was also, the thing I was thinking about recently was Showbiz Expo was also that place where you just go and walk around because you'd run into everybody.
It was a social event.
I remember very specifically being there one year and walking and seeing Vilmos Zsigmond walking down, looking at stuff or whatever, and looking at him and thinking, oh my God, I just saw Vilmos Zsigmond. And then, I said to someone else, oh my God, I just saw Vilmos Zsigmond. And now I'm thinking back and I'm like, what did I think that meant? Who cares? But it was a big deal for me.
It was a real big deal.
DP.
It was.
Yeah.
I mean, for two guys coming up from, the ranks and making it on our own. Nothing was handed.
This was long before I did ER or anything else.
Right.
I didn't know if I'd have a career, but I was like, wow, that's like a real cinematographer.
That was that was a league of their own when we.
Oh yeah, totally.
So anyway, the transition for me from film to digital.
Was that on JAG?
No, it's an interesting time. Jimmy Muro was doing Southland.
Yep.
And he actually it was when the red one first came out, going back to Robert Keslow. This is going back now. He's no longer an assistant.
Yeah.
He's a successful rental house owner.
Yep.
We talk every single day.
It's funny because Keslow used to be this small little house, and now it's one of the biggest houses around. It's amazing.
Anyway, so Robert calls me up one day, and we're laughing, and one of the things Robert and I love to do together is we love Vegas. We have so many great memories in Vegas together.
Great.
One-day trips in and out. Well, he was in Vegas for one of the NABs.
The NAB is, again, it's another sort of showbiz. This is all the new gear kind of expo. Yes.
Right. So he was there, and I didn't go that year. And he says, I got to tell you, I had a real interesting night last night. I got on a run on one of the craps tables, and I'm having a great time. And this guy next to me, who's making money with me on my rolls, looks over and goes, hey, you're Robert Keslow, right? And he's all, yeah. It's like, it was, I want to get the name right, Jim Gerard. the owner of Oakley.
Okay. Yes. That sounds like it's
who
his name,
was the original owner of Red.
Oakley sunglasses.
Oakley sunglasses.
Which inexplicably decided to start making digital cameras. The Red was the camera that they made, and for a while, that was sort of the digital camera that everybody started using.
But it wasn't even made at that point.
Oh, wow.
So he starts to talk to Robert while they're on the craps table.
So wait, how does he know who Robert is?
It sounds like he knew who Robert was, and he followed him to the craps table.
Oh, so he'd done some research or something. Okay.
He knew
All
that
right.
Robert
Okay.
owned a rental house in L.A.
Okay.
And that,
Yeah. And again, at that time, kind of a smaller rental house, not one of the big
not-
ones
not-
like it is now.
well, he was. It was definitely a point where he was. I mean, he was in his fourth building. I mean, yes.
Oh, okay. Already? Yeah. Okay.
Robert
Gotcha.
Keslow started his rental company in the garage of his house in Torrance.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
yeah, I didn't know where he was in his career at that point, but okay.
I was with him the day we went to Home Depot and bought a bunch of 2x4s and plywood so we could build shelves in his garage to put his 3 SR cameras on
great.
shelves.
That's great.
But this is 20 years later.
Yeah. So the Oakley guy corners him at the craps table.
And says to him, "Hey, you're Robert Keslow, and I could tell you like to gamble. Now let me give you the sales pitch.
This is
You
great.
know who I am.
Yeah.
I have a very successful sunglass company. Everybody knows me. I want to get into your industry. You know I've been developing a camera for years now. I'm months away from delivery. Months away. We still need capital. I'm not asking you for a ton of money. I'm watching the way you play craps. I know what a motion picture camera costs. You're used to buying Aeroflex cameras and lenses. You're used to spending $500,000 on a camera package.
Sure.
I'm asking you to trust me, to buy a handful of cameras from me. They're going to be between $10,000 and $12,000 a camera.
Nothing comparatively.
And Robert and him had so much fun on the craps table, and then they went over to the bar and was laughing and drinking, and Robert calls me the next day and goes, I don't know if I'm a sucker or what, but he talked me into it, and you know what? I like this guy. It's like I bought 10 cameras from him. They don't even exist. He showed me diagrams of what they're going to look like, and they may or may. But like he said, it's like the 10 cameras I bought from him.
It's a fraction.
I can't even buy one loaded, airy.
It's a small gamble for a potentially large return, which it came out. I'm assuming.
I said to him, "Dude, you're nuts. Come on. First of all, do you want that clientele? Do you really? I mean, who's going to the film students are going to want? I mean,
yeah.
I was so.
I remember when it first came
narrow-sighted.
out. It's probably what you were thinking there. It's like it's a sunglass company. What are you kidding me?
It's digital. Is it really there yet?
Yeah.
So-
but by the way, that right there in a nutshell is why that man is the owner and president of the Oakley Sunglass, because he knows how to go out on a limb and take a chance like that and sell and all those other things.
Absolutely.
Right?
And
That's-
Robert too.
Yeah.
To say that, you know what?
I'm going to take a gamble on this.
I'm going to take a chance.
Yeah.
And a week later, I was working on Heroes, and David
TV
Dotson
show.
shows up on
David
the
Dotson
set.
from Panavision, who, by the way, is the reason that I'm here because he allows me to come in here and use the theater.
And I totally consider David. We have
Great guy.
a great guy.
Yeah.
Panavision supplied the cameras for JAG for 10 seasons.
There you go.
And the key first on it for 4 seasons, the service that they bent over backwards for.
Yeah.
They could not, they are such good people.
Well, and as the key first AC, you have a really intimate relationship with
the
company.
rental house.
Yeah,
Seriously, I consider a huge part of my success on JAG was how hard Panavision.
Yeah, they have your
serviced
back
us.
at all times.
It didn't matter what time of day or night.
Which is why people use Panavision, because they have the reputation, and so many other places. But, yeah.
I'm on Heroes. Robert called me the day before. News in this industry flies.
Yeah.
David Dotson shows up the next day on the set of Heroes, which was a Panavision show, comes over to me just to rib me. And we're friends. He said, I heard your cousin bought a couple of those red cameras last night.
That's how fast.
And I said, you heard? I heard too. He says, boy, he must have had a couple of drinks in him to buy that stuff. And I said, he's thinking of it as a gamble and stuff like that. And he said, I'm busting your balls. I hope they do well. It's like, but it was.
But again, back then it was like the sunglass company. I mean, that's really what it was. Just I mean,
what do they know about?
Why would anybody think that would be successful? But he obviously was impressed with this guy and saw enough in it that And again, like you said, I'm not betting the farm. This isn't going to destroy everything if it goes south, so I'll take a gamble.
He took a gamble.
And
some people wouldn't take that gamble.
So was Keslow the first place to have the red then?
So Keslow got those first 10 red cameras.
Yeah.
And talk about a timely topic. We just went into the writer's strike.
Yeah.
When they got that camera.
As I said in another podcast, for anybody listening in the future, this is the 2023 writer's strike, not the 2026, 2029.
Right.
2032.
What year was the last writer's strike? It was
2007, 2008, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is how far back we're going.
Actually, right now we're technically in the Writers Screen Actors Guild strike, but yes.
So the writers had just come back to work, and the actors were threatening a strike.
Yes, because they're as is now, their contracts are sort of up together.
Correct.
Happenstance, yeah.
So the actors were threatening a strike, and someone at the studios looked at contracts and realized that if they don't shoot on film, it doesn't fall under the SAG contract.
Because it happens to say film, that it's shot on film, whatever it is. So if they shoot on digital, it's something else.
And that was for the soap operas, and
wow.
that would fall under AFTRA. This was before the SAG-AFTRA merged.
Yeah, AFTRA is the other guild, Screen Actors Guild, and AFTRA are the two sort of acting guilds. But yeah.
So overnight, all the studios said, we are not greenlighting another show right now that's shot on film. Shut down every film. We're going to get these actors to the table. We're going to get them to negotiate. So overnight, all of a sudden, every production in town needed to find a digital camera to shoot on. And there was only one digital camera out at that point. Well, there were two.
There was probably the Panavision.
They had the Genesis, right?
Genesis.
The Genesis, and Panasonic had their
F900 or whatever.
that boat.
Yeah.
And the red.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden the phone started ringing off the hook from Robert to Robert.
Amazing.
And that one of the first ones was Jimmy Muro. Southland, but Jimmy was such a visionary that when Robert took the red to begin with, Jimmy said, I'll use that fucking camera before the studios came down with this.
That doesn't surprise me, because the whole thing with Southland was they wanted to be small and light and action and
so it wasn't mandated.
Yeah.
Jimmy wanted to try out.
That was actually what his desire was.
It was his desire. Yeah. So he already had dibs on a package from Robert.
Yeah, amazing.
So, of course, Robert gave him. So I ended up on Southland working with the red camera on the first time it was ever used. Robert had all of his 10 cameras rented full time 2 weeks after taking ownership of them. And then to make things even better, Jim, who owned Red, decided that now everybody's calling him saying, when can we buy your cameras?
Sure.
And he made it very public. I begged all of you guys to buy my cameras. Everything coming off the assembly line right now, Robert gets first dibs at. Great. So that was the transition to digital for us. Now, the reason I brought it up is you and I spent so many years with film, and I loved film. And as an operator, your eye on the eyepiece, you had the best view on the set of everything, the best.
Yep.
You saw the lighting, you talk about front row seats to some great performances.
Yep.
And some front row seats to not so good
to all the performances.
But that reflex viewing system, looking through the best pieces of glass that are ever made. I mean, we had the best, and then to go to digital, now all of a sudden you don't have that reflex viewing system. But what we could do with these cameras.
Yes, because they were smaller and they were. It was a trade-off. There were pluses and minuses.
And then with the process of being able to go back to the DIT or Video Village
Yep.
or I mean, it's just the whole different in film. You had to wait for the next day.
Yes.
To
Although remember early on there was a whole thing of like, can we play that back? And it was like, no, you can't play it back because it might mess up the chip. And that was the whole thing.
Right.
I remember early on going,
Oh, yeah.
what is the point of all this then?
Well,
then we all got
we
got past that. But yeah.
having to pack the camera with ice constantly. I
Oh
mean, it
boy. Or the other side. I remember getting to New York because I moved to New York at one point, and my first day there was in the winter. And I was out on the street, and it was the Genesis, the Panavision digital camera, and they have this, camera that's like, I don't know what, $200,000 or whatever,
Right.
and they have a $20 hair dryer, and they're taking it out on the LCD monitor because it's frozen
over.
It doesn't work. Oh God,
All the
beginnings
tricks.
were crazy, but there were growing pains, and we got through it.
we get I just absolutely love the digital format these days.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's come a tremendous way, but at the end of the day, it's still a box that's taking an image. It's about it's about framing it and telling the story, regardless of how it's being captured, right? I mean, that changes some things, but at the end of the day, it's still the storytelling, right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Where to put the camera to tell the story.
yeah.
And what lens to use and how much depth of
100%.
field and
So talking about where to put the camera. Tell me about working with a dolly grip. What's your relationship like with the dolly grip, and how do you like a newer camera operator coming in, or when you come on a show and this dolly
it's a
grip
real
you don't
important.
know?
It could be the most important question we discuss right now.
Right?
I mean,
Yeah.
As coming from a camera background, focus puller, I could carry a bad focus puller. I've had to do it in the past.
You mean as an operator?
It's like if
get 'em through it.
if I could
Yeah.
handhold a focus puller. I mean, if I'm saddled with someone who, is not where we need them to be,
Yep.
and it doesn't happen often.
No,
but it does. I mean, I could simplify a shot. I know what we need to do to get the shot and help the folk. Even if I have to take an extra couple of minutes before we call in first team,
Sure.
and help the focus puller get some extra marks or something.
Yeah.
But the dolly grip,
Yeah.
if you don't have the talent behind you and the communication, and you can't do your work. I mean, it's like you might as well be on a set of sticks, and that's not what we do to tell stories anymore. Sure, there are moments where you don't want to move the camera to tell a story, but I mean, in this day and age, we move the camera. And it has to be at the specific time or the right time. And once again, with my way of working, where everybody's part of
That's what I
the
was gonna ask you.
decision making,
Yeah.
my dolly grip is, I would say, easily. I'm going to say 50% of the success, and I'm not the other 50% because I rely on so I'll take 20% of the success.
I hear
He
you.
gets 50%
And
back there.
I think also, by the way, shot for shot, that those numbers change from one to the other.
Correct.
Right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Now, fortunately, and I know you're in the same part of your career too, that most of the time I get hired these days, I at least get asked, do I have a dolly grip I want to bring? Or is it okay if we bring in so-and-so? And I'm going to tell you, it's like you walk on any of the lots, whether it's Warner Brothers or Paramount, or it's like you can't get from the parking to your stage without knowing half the crew that you see. And I'm fortunate to know personally most of the best dolly grips in the business.
It's a blessing.
And I so enjoy the camaraderie. It's like you were saying earlier about losing the focus puller on the camera. And I'll be honest with you that in the past few years with carrying a remote head, it's not just I've been fortunate in the past few years to be working on better budget things where it's not just the Ronin that we have. We have a slew of very expensive
high-end
remote heads to choose from. So I've even found that I'm off the dolly more than I'm on the dolly these days because the tools are there. And the first time, I said, okay, pull the head off the dolly, the remote head. I'm going to get back on the dolly for the next shot.
Yeah.
And they pull it off and I get on. And then halfway through lining up with the dolly grip, he says, if you weren't on the camera, on the dolly, we could have gotten around here. And I'm looking at him going,
You're the problem.
I was thinking the same thing right now. Why'd we pull that off?
Yeah.
And so, but you're still on a headset all day long with the dolly grip.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're right next to the dolly. It's like to be able to work with the quality of dolly grips that we get to work with. There's something. First of all, it's that old school mentality that we're starting to lose in our industry. It's these dolly grips that are at this level have been pushing dolly for decades.
Yeah.
They're such experience, such pros back there. They're so good at their craft. They're so good with their communication.
No question.
I mean, my God, it's like I'm off the set on a remote head and my dolly grip's left on the set with the actors and the first AD. And after the second or third time he sees me running from my workstation, my remote head with coming back onto the set, he said, hey, Brian, I got this. Don't worry. Hey guys, can you move over here a little? When we come out, is it okay if you sit a little?
So he's almost jumping into the job of the operator a little bit because you're back in the other room or back in the back of the set.
The dolly grips, the good ones these days. It's going to be an interesting thing when we come back to work to see who's coming back and who's not.
Yeah,
because
I think there are a number of people who may step away and
who said enough's enough
and won't be easily replaced.
And that's a position where I don't know how you replace them with.
Because you need the years of experience to understand. It's the thing that I've always said. There's how to move from A to B and why to move from A to B, and the why to move is what you need someone to have.
When I said originally the part of the focus pulling that I loved, the zooming, and the pulling focus at the same time. These dolly grips. It's not just booming and making camera moves. The amount of technology that they've had, like the assistants have had to learn so much new equipment. The dolly grips, they have to, almost all the shows we do now carry telescoping cranes.
Sure.
And it's just the amount, I've drawn a blank, the motion control techno.
Oh. I know what you mean. But you can basically program moves with it. And this, right. I think what it comes down to is the stuff that used to be specialty stuff is stuff that now
they don't want to carry.
We use all the time.
They don't want to carry another. The dolly grip's responsible for it. And
how many shows are you on now that just has a mini scope all the time? A small remote telescoping crane.
On Picard, I think we carried 3. Telescoping cranes.
Yeah.
3 different sizes.
That's amazing. And they're there all the time. These guys become expert at it, which is incredible.
And, it's not just the A.
Yeah.
The B guy needs to know how to use them, and the C guy needs to.
It's incredible.
Because, you got that much hardware sitting around. You don't want to be the one who the director walks over and goes, why aren't you on the little crane? It's like because this guy, I don't want to. But we can't do that because you have that much talent behind you, so you use it.
You use it. It's there.
It's there.
Yep. No question. You mentioned the first AD, and I wanted to ask you about that. As the A camera operator, tell me about your interactions with the first AD. What's that relationship like?
It's so important to get along with people. Doesn't matter what department it is. Early on in my career, it's like every time something changed, it's like, this is stupid. We had a plan. Why aren't we doing it? And then as you mature and get old, you realize people aren't making these changes just because it's fun there's so many reasons.
most of which you don't know.
Planning a day of production, never mind a week of production or a season of production, a movie. There's so many moving pieces, and it's like those decisions are made always. There's always a reason, and when you realize you're working with good people, they're usually good decisions. Sometimes there are no good decisions.
Yeah,
you just have to keep moving.
Yeah, okay, absolutely.
Just like there's good operators and there's experienced operators, sometimes you don't always get to work with who you want to as the first AD, but you're a team. I mean, you've got the same goal. It's always the same goal that we want to. I mean, one of the crews that I've worked with for a real long period, one of my two friends' famous lines is, "We just want to make the best damn show we can."
Yeah.
And we don't, it's like, I mean, everybody, it's rare that there's someone there who just just wants to shoot the page count.
Yeah.
But the first AD is one of your closest allies for so many reasons. It's not just about what you're doing right this minute. It's about what you're doing 2 weeks from now, or it's like our relationship with the editor. When you could, as a camera operator, when you can actually text the editor during the day and say, hey, listen, on scene 28, it didn't go like we planned. And the director said, don't worry, we will not use. Do me a favor. In take 3, it's all there. And it's not just me asking this.
Yeah.
Whoever the actor was who came over to me and says, are we okay?
Gotcha.
And I said, we're okay.
Yeah.
I spoke to the director. They will not use that. Well, we've all heard that before.
Yeah, that's famous last words.
I'm going to talk to the editor. I'm going to make sure the editor knows. Now, granted.
Still might happen.
It still may happen.
You've done the most you can.
And that's like the relation with the first AD. It's like, it took me you talk about how long it took me to become a good operator.
Yeah.
Well, when you said that, and when I said it took 3.5, 4 years for me to feel, yes, that was the panning and tilting.
Yeah.
The stand-ups, the understanding why we're going to change lenses and move the dolly rather than just zooming in.
Yeah, and then there's the other 80% of operating that you had to learn.
But it took me so much longer to learn other people's crafts and how important every person on that set is. It's like they are there to help you.
I think that's an incredible point, actually, that is worth sort of, zeroing in on, is that part of what makes a good operator is understanding what other people have to do and understanding what their jobs are, so that when you ask something, you know what's involved in that, or that the AD has to get this scene within 3 hours, and that's a big part of their job, so you can help them, or that the set dresser
get someone off the clock.
Yeah,
it's a tomorrow's schedule.
Get someone off the clock. I mean, how many times have you done that where you've gone, hey, if you want, I can check, because I think B camera's probably not going to work on this last scene, and if you want to get them off the clock so they can come in early tomorrow morning to get that, blah blah blah, and then suddenly they're in your back pocket, and you need something then, and they're like, oh, how can I help you out? Because,
and the truth is, I'm not going to be a hypocrite or tell you I haven't always been this way. I mean, this is learned craft.
It's a process, right?
I burned bridges through my career with first ADs where I look back and it's like, that was stupid.
Do you think because you were less mature? Or,
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
it's a maturity thing.
I've done that. Yeah, we all have.
I mean, and when you ask me about a first AD, it's like, there's been a big turnover in that position in the past 15 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, I mean, my wife, who's my best therapist, who knows quite a bit about this industry because
save some money.
she worked in this industry when she was younger, and she really understands it.
So she knows that you're going to come home at the end of the day and just download.
The first thing she says to me when I walk in the door, "I'm not one of your assistants. Take the bass out of your voice."
That's a good one.
But a joke. She's joking. I mean, breaking the. She knows that when I first come in the door, and the kids know it too. It's like, Dad's. Give him 15 minutes to decompress.
Because he's just been driving home for 25 minutes getting all angry about some problem in a shot that nobody will ever see, but that will drive him crazy for the next 10 years. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I get it. We're all the same.
But it's. I don't think it's just our industry. I think it's. I mean, we get older, we mature. There was a big turnover in the DGA. The DGA promoted different ways of getting into their guild and promoted from within their guild, maybe a little faster with certain goals in mind. But, most of the time, they're all good people, and they may not have all the answers or all the skills but once again, going back to what my wife always says, is she says, well, come on, you've stayed in the game so long. That's why they hire you. That's why you're in the position that you're in.
Sure.
That's why they respect you and like you. You do know, but you don't have to shove it down their throats that you know more. Quietly pulling someone to a corner and offering your, not I wouldn't say advice, because I don't know. Some people either don't. It's just voicing your opinion on something
and offering assistance
privately,
right? Yeah, privately, exactly.
Without embarrassing anyone. Without if you want, we could probably talk about lighting the next scene right now while we're waiting for talent, because then the electrician. At least if we know what direction we're going to start the scene in. Sure. We could start roughing it in.
To what you were talking about, I'll give you an example that might, I think, it might resonate. Is this was just last year. I was on something, and we had a director who was a little all over the place and very hard to rein in. And it was the kind of thing where I'm doing a big Steadicam shot, and it's the end of a long week, and I'm exhausted. And a big Steadicam shot, sorry, not some huge walk and talk. It was actually inside of a house, and it was probably only a minute and a half, but it was a very slow sort of very slow moving, and I had to walk around a lot of things.
Some of the hardest shots ever.
They're some of the hardest shots. It's like doing Tai Chi with cement blocks on you, and it's fine. It's great. And I had twisted my knee or something like that, and I was doing fine. But I would pick up the director and I would pick up the Steadicam and go to one, and then I'd look and see the director in the back of the set talking to the actor. So I'd go and put it down, and I'd pick it up. So finally, after about 3 or 4 takes, and we ended up doing like 16 of these takes because this director was a tweaker, and I went up at 3 or 4 takes. I went up to the assistant director, who we had a good relationship, and I said, I just want to let you know, from now on, we're going to slate with the Steadicam on the stand, and call this, and then I'm going to call out and say, is everybody ready? And I want to hear from you or someone that everybody is ready, and then I will put the Steadicam up. Well, why are you going to do that? I said, because I keep on putting it up and standing here, and for the purposes of the shot and the show, I need to make sure that I can do this 16 times, and I've hurt my knee, or it's bothering me because I hurt it or whatever. And I don't want to not use all my energy for the thing. And the response was, "Oh, great! So now you're gonna screw me by doing this and da 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 da." Now, and I just said, "This is the way we're gonna do it. It's the way I need to do it. I just want to let you know I need this from you." So we parted ways. Now, 10 years ago, I probably would have turned to that person and gone,
no,
some very potentially deserved things. And instead, I just took a deep breath and we went, and that's the way we did it. And there was some attitude coming from back there. And afterwards, I pulled the AD aside and I said, I just want to throw something out there for you to think about. And I actually don't want to have a conversation about it because I want to go home and go to sleep. This is the last shot of the day. And I said, what I just told you was a response to not a problem with me, but a problem with your director. that you're having, and I understand how frustrated you are, but I really, really take it as an offense that you said that it was my problem, that I was causing you a problem, because I was not causing you a problem. I was actually the solution there, because the problem would have been that after 8 takes and we didn't have it, me saying I can't do this shot anymore.
Right.
So I said, I'm going to leave now, because again, I don't want to discuss this, and what I'm telling you is factual, but I just want to make sure that you understand where I'm coming from, that I would never do anything purposely to cause you a problem, and the problem was there. But
that's your reputation.
Well,
I mean,
so I left, and on the way home I got a call, and the call was basically, I really want to apologize. You were absolutely right, and I'm sorry that it got to that. I'm just spinning out of control. And I said, I totally understand, and I'm so sorry that you're having to deal with this, and I'm doing everything I can to. And this was at the end of an episode where we were all frustrated with this person,
right?
And I said,
sure.
but I said, but at the end of the day, I can't take it on the chin. And I remember thinking, the reason why I was thinking of this now, I remember thinking after I hung up the phone, I'm sort of so glad that I've gotten to the point in my career where I'm not,
you've gotten there
grabbing someone and.
you got there earlier in your career, because you have have a wonderful reputation.
I hope. Well, thank you. I hope so. I could give you some names of some people who would say I didn't.
Yeah.
But we all. I think
it took me longer to get here.
I think the thing to pass on to people who are coming through it is, look, you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to say things to people that you don't want, because this is a very high pressure situation,
right? And
you don't want to be the one who looks bad, and et cetera, et cetera. And I think,
but it was also inappropriate for this person to say that.
100%.
It's a lack of experience, not knowing how heavy that equipment is or how difficult those slow shots are.
And I don't actually think it was any of that. I think it was just being so wrapped up and being frustrated by being able to control this director,
right,
and saying, "Are you ready? You can't go in there because you can't do this to people." So in other words, I understood what was going on.
Right.
But yeah, anyway, like you said, you mature and you learn from your mistakes, and the more comfortable you get in your job. But I think that's all. That's all of coming up. How many years you been operating?
17.
And but how many years you been in the business then? 30?
Over 35.
Do you still get nervous when you start a job?
No.
Really?
I don't get nervous anymore. Going back to the mentor thing, those things that you always remember, very early in my career, one of my mentors said to me, you're better off being everybody's second choice than one person's first choice.
That's a very good piece of advice.
And this person worked all the time.
Yeah.
And, took me a while to learn that one. And I have a good group of people that I may not be the first call, but I am absolutely this. I'm part of everything they do.
And if you get that with enough people, you're going to keep working, right?
Yes, and being the fact that you're not the first call, if you're not available for them, it's not a deal breaker for you. I'm never calling him again.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have my core people that I'm their first call.
Yeah.
But I have a larger circle of I am the second call, and I know but it's worked for me. It's
nothing wrong with that.
It's because I love the people.
Yeah.
I absolutely love Dana right now. Dana is in Thailand.
Dana
Gonzalez is in Thailand right now.
Oh, doing the Alien TV show, right?
Aliens.
Yeah.
And who's his A-camera operator? Mitch Dubin. If I have to be the second call, because I couldn't do it because it's in Thailand, and I have a family here in LA, and I would love
not a bad person to lose out to.
But he called me to do Legion,
yeah,
and he said, "You'll do B camera." Mitch is on A. Now, if I have to do, first of all, sitting here with you, like I said, I am really, truthfully, heartfelt honored that you asked me to do. That's how I feel. You want me to sit next to Mitch and just
Dubin?
Listen and watch?
No question.
I'm not too old to learn.
And you're going to pay me for this?
I'm not too old to learn. And let me tell you, not a day goes by when you're sitting next to Mitch Dubin that you're not learning something.
That's exactly right.
Because, he really, he's the,
He's a great operator. He's been around forever. He's learned, he knows a tremendous amount. And he's very happy to share anything. fantastic.
Yes.
I'm waiting for him to get back from Thailand so I can have him on this podcast. But yeah.
So it's like,
I think on that note, also,
Go ahead.
I don't know if you ever had this earlier on in your career. I know I had it. I think most people do. There is that thing where you hear that someone's got a show and so, some operator's doing the show, or some operator calls you and says, hey, I just got a show and so this DP that you worked with, what's he like? And you're thinking, why didn't I get that call? And, it could be that they don't want to call you. It also could be that they look at it and they go, you know what? This director's a little quirky. I don't think that's the best fit. This other person is the best fit. I mean, it's not always a negative thing. It's just people make decisions for all sorts of reasons. And what you realize is, you just want to basically, for me, it's you want to do the best work you can and be the best person that you can. And hopefully people will recognize that and want you back.
You asked me if I get nervous before a show. I honestly haven't gotten nervous before starting something in probably close to 10 years.
That's great.
As far as not getting something that someone else got, it's like it's a weird thing that at this point in my career, it's like I just know it wasn't meant to be.
Wasn't the right show.
It wasn't. He's got his reasons. I don't need to pick up the phone right this second and call him up and go, hey, what the hell? Confront. I mean,
yeah.
If I think that maybe I should have even been up for it, if I have some kind of belief like why did he get it? I'll talk. We'll talk. We're obviously friends, or have some kind of relationship.
Sure.
We'll speak shortly, and he'll tell me when he's ready to say, hey, listen, I didn't bring you in for this or that. It's like
or the director just worked with this operator and wanted them or whatever. There's so many reasons.
Politics.
Yeah.
I'm at the point now. It's like I wouldn't be available for so and so if he did. Now I didn't have to turn him down, or things happen in our industry. In this industry, it happens.
Yep.
And you don't get to where you and I are with thin skin.
That's for sure.
It
does take a little bit to learn that early on.
The ups and downs of our career, it's not for the weak.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to talk about speaking to the future generation of filmmakers.
Yep.
I mean, you want to ask me what I have to say to them.
Well, I was actually getting to that. So I'll leave you with the question. First of all, thank you, because this is great. And so much good information. Alone the Red story I thought was fantastic. I had no idea about that. But I kind of have started leaving everybody with this question, which is basically advice for younger operators on how to succeed, and or advice that you wish you had when you were at their point that you know now.
Well, what I would tell the younger filmmakers is, while you're in school, while you're studying, it's a wonderful business. So many people say, have a backup plan, study something, have a second made. But if you really want to do this, at least on one of your summers, go work. Even we worked for free coming up. And I know these days people don't like to hear working for free, but it's not for free because education and experience, you can't put a price on it sometimes. So you're doing all this hard work in school and you're paying these people to teach you these things. Spend 3 or 4 weeks doing the craft, or at least try to apprentice. Think about, do you want to have a family? Do you want to have kids? Where do you see yourself in 15 years? Not just when you're getting out of school, 15 years down the road. Be practical. Save your money as much as you can. Do some research and see if this is really what you want to do. I'm going to tell you, when I was 18 years old on this film sets with all the laughing, you feel like you're working at Disneyland all the time, or Magic Mountain, whatever it is that you think is a great place.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. We'll be back soon with another great episode. Don't forget to check us out on theop.io for all sorts of information on operating and storytelling. So thanks for listening and have a great day.